17 East Monroe Street, Chicago, Illinois. We have the Palmer House Hotel, where we are told that there have been multiple Palmer House hotels on this exact same site. When the first Palmer House was built as a wedding present in September of 1870, because we all know that building a massive hotel in downtown Chicago and giving it away as a wedding present in the 1800s was very normal. This was a common gesture back then, and you're going to want to stay around to the end when we tie this entire thing together and find something awesome that connects with this city and everything that we found. So this hotel present opens up in 1870 with no issues, of course. All of the horses pulled the stone to the site perfectly, and they all did their part. And the very next year, it of course burns down in the Great Chicago Bomb. Oh, did I say bomb? Well, they tell us that it was a fire, but I don't believe that these great fires were actually fires. This looks to me like these so-called great fires in every single city in the world, basically. You can go ahead and look it up. It happened in a city near you. These were actually bombs, in my opinion. The destruction was something that a fire alone could never accomplish, especially when we are given the fire story from the National Geographic Society that the Chicago fire bomb started by accidentally knocking over a lantern when running away from a card game. And this causes the entire city to burn down. Stone buildings that look like palaces. I think we all know that this is ridiculous at this point. Could you imagine if someone in your neighborhood's house started on fire and that fire burns down your entire neighborhood? No. And not to mention that all of the houses would have been built with brick and stone, materials that don't burn down to the ground from house fires. Let's take a look at the destruction again, where they tell us that this is the ruins of the first Palmer House. And for one, are we 100% sure that this photo is showing us the destruction of the first Palmer House? And for two, is this even Chicago? Could this be a random street in Germany right after they bombed it? And for three, take a look at those buildings in the background. This is from a tipped over lantern? Or is it more possible that we are being lied to? The buildings are just ripped apart. They're shredded and smashed. And we know you can't burn down stone and brick buildings from a simple house fire. They don't get anywhere near hot enough. This is exactly why you put stone around the fire pit. You make stone and brick fireplaces inside your house, right inside your living room, and nobody panics. It doesn't spread into your kitchen or into your neighbor's house. It doesn't crumble and look like it exploded. Are you seeing the lie very clearly now? Now let's go deeper. Now they tell us that this photo is the second Palmer House that was constructed on the same site as the first one. And before we go on, they tell us that this was completed just 4 years after the Chicago firebomb by Donkeys Incorporated with the help from their horse and wagon community. They just cleaned up that old one that was exploded all over the place. They moved all the broken stone and cleared off a solid, nice, and level spot for a brand new foundation. In just 4 years, no problem. They built this after the fire. Take a look at these horses and wagons, right next to the completed palace. Built in less than 4 years? And honestly, it looks like it's been there for a long time. We had these wood planks set up that they would use to go from the paved sidewalk from the old world to these dirt roads. If this horse and wagon community built these sidewalks, they would have just built a ramp leading to the dirt with the same sidewalk material. But they didn't. They went and got a wood plank because that was what they were capable of in that time period. They were capable of a wood plank as their ramp to walk from the sidewalk to the dirt road. They found these buildings and they were occupying the old world civilization's work. And we're still doing this today, all over the world. In 1870, the first Palmer House was completed. In 1871, a year later, a tipped over lantern and tons of bombs go off and destroy the whole city. Now the whole city was destroyed. And I'm only bringing this up because it's to show what our civilization today is capable of so that we can compare. We had to clean up Ground Zero in New York. But it took our civilization within the last 25 years, 8 months to clean up 2 buildings. So in 1871, how long do you think it would take those horse and wagons? Realistically, without massive equipment, how long would it take them to clean this up? Not 8 months, I can guarantee you that. It would have taken them years. So now knowing this information, here we go. We are told that they cleaned up this entire site. They planned out a new one with perfection. They made sure they had the right construction team picked out. They planned out the materials. They had enough horses and wagons to pull the stone and marble. Everything else they needed to do, permits and everything, and get this second building done in 1875. Completed in 1875. From the point of the fire to the completion date, only taking 4 years. With Chicago winters being brutal, we know that this is logistically impossible, and they give us this nice photo of it. When today, we don't build any 7-story palaces in less than 4 years. And that's not including the entire cleanup project, from the fire bombs going off in 1871, all over downtown Chicago. Oh, did I forget to mention that this AI-generated story just couldn't help itself but throw another fire into this paragraph, saying that this was the world's only fireproof hotel and built with perfection and with rapid speeds in the 1800s. And get this, 1920 hits. So this building is supposedly only 45 years old at this point. We have supposedly the world's first and only fireproof building. And please just look at this thing again. We can see for ourselves. Does this look like a building that's going to go out of date in 45 years? No, of course it doesn't. Well, they demolished it and make the third Palmer House on the exact same site. Unbelievable. This time, it only took them 2 years to get done. They tell us that this is the first one and that this is the second one. And now with everything that we know that the narrative is ridiculous and a total lie at this point. So let's ask a massive question here. Do you think it's possible that these photos of these 2 buildings were just photos of other buildings around Chicago or even in different cities that they just knocked down and threw them into this story? It seems like it to me. They had a lot of buildings to get rid of to start this reset. And this seems like the most logical explanation in my opinion. Use one building to explain away all of these other old world buildings that are no longer here. And this third Palmer House Hotel is just built on top of an old world structure. You can see the difference between the old world construction on the bottom and our bland brick style where it almost looks like they threw a layer of brick over the top of the old world's work. There were a lot of buildings in Shalaga that needed to be destroyed. We found a lot more stuff today, and we're just getting started like I said earlier. Let's take a minute and thank all the people that keep this channel running and help it grow to new people every week. Welcome to episode 58 of my lunch break. I hope you're all having a great day, and if you're new, welcome. And I want to thank all of our sponsors over on Patreon. Thank you to FlatEarthDave.com. You can check out his app. I'll put the link in the description, and you can use my referral code, MLB. The app is awesome. It shows a lot of videos that are really hard to find. They've got them all in great playlists. He also has my lunch break on the homeschool section of the app, which is really cool. Thank you for that. Thank you to Rebecca Kay, Don Gaston, Christopher Arietta, The Lady Lacey Show, David and Sherry Ferguson, Edwin Johnson, Chuck Templeton, Joy Lee, Leslie Pipkins, PNR, Stephanie Nolan, The Burlesons, Suez KC, Dan Woodall, Corey Franks, Dale, DJ Clicktrack, Edward and Brianna, Jacob Law, Jim Ribley and Christine Duggan, Kyle Glascock, Tim Rack, Two Spirit, William Richard Jeffries V, Zach Bronco, PKTFnews.org, Regna Saturna, Emerald H, 3D6.space, Attila Power, Buck Suey, Dakota Dunn, D-Rob33, Eric Martinez, Ivan Apoctoli, Jesse DeLeon, Jim Bro, Kit Kat, Todd K, Edwin Rice, Helmut, Charles Kruger, Daniel Zid, HaggardT-shirts.com, Marie C., Antonio Kozievich, Glenn Gunderson, Pacific Crafted, Carla Fitzgerald, Roy Schoenholtz, James Alt, Dan McGee, Vince Moreno, Roz Matthews, Shiba Shaba in the Darkness, Spartan Oneg, and VKH Bonner. You guys are all awesome and helping this channel out a lot. So this Palmer House Hotel all happened because of this Potter Palmer guy, supposedly. And this guy is pinned as the guy that developed Lakeshore Drive and worked with another character that got a lot of old world buildings pinned to his name. As we have shown, Marshall Field, where this guy got the Field Museum, where they also got to share the department store chain, the Marshall Field Company, along with this other guy, Levi Leiter, which we can look into in another episode. I'm sure he's got the exact same kind of stuff going on. My point for coming back to this Potter Palmer was because he got to live in this castle mansion. And it's an obvious old world castle that was once located on North Lakeshore Drive, Chicago. Did you know Chicago had castles? And this one was supposedly constructed in just 3 years, from 1882 to 1885, by the Cobb and Frost firm, which we have gone over. We know that they are characters as well. The castle in Chicago, destroyed in 1950. The thing was only 65 years old. I'm gonna ask you guys, do castles go out of date in 65 years? The last time I checked, they don't. I mean, even the houses that we build today with their vinyl siding that fall off once a year when the wind blows. These houses don't even go out of date in just 65 years. Yet, a massive castle thrown together in 3 years in the 1800s that looks like it's straight out of a Disney movie. That one goes out of style in just 65 years. They must have looked at it with disgust in that time period. Their standards were just so high while riding around on their donkeys, located in Chicago, Illinois. While they're also over there, just a couple blocks down, gifting old world hotels, all pinned to this Potter Palmer guy. It's amazing. What a time to be alive in the 1800s. You get free hotels and castles everywhere. You know what? I was thinking about it. Let's just go see what this Levi Leiter guy was all about. He also got to live in an old world mansion. They tell us that this one was constructed in 1891. That's the only construction details that they give us on this mansion, where we have seen in previous episodes that they know all about the year -300, over 2,300 years ago. They give us these ridiculous stories about construction, but in 1891, there's nothing. The 55-room marble stairway with a great hall mansion was, of course, taken over by the US government and then demolished just 56 years after it was built because there was nothing to see there. No. And this whole project, we are told, started in 1891, where the old world building that had white marble ceilings, an elaborate fireplace, carved woodwork, because this was very normal stuff in the 1800s. Anybody could have done that. They don't even care to mention who that would have been. They knocked out that hand-carved woodwork that they only needed for 56 years. They start the project in 1891, where he buys the land on June 12th. We are being told that they still haven't started the construction because they finally get the permit. We already know this thing is done in 1893, so they better get going on it. We only got 18 months to work with now. So they get this Theo guy picked out, where they give us a list of other buildings to investigate because this St. Thomas Church is also destroyed. So we get stained glass windows, a marble stairway, hand-carved woodwork, marble ceilings with zero information as to where all of this material even came from. We are told, and we are supposed to believe, that this 55-room masterpiece is done in less than 18 months. When they tell us it was done at some point in 1893, where they decide that it's just not cutting it anymore, and they all agree to knock it down just 56 years later. In a realistic world where everybody is thinking logically, this is a story for a baby. We don't build places today in 18 months. and then knock them down in just 56 years. And they didn't do that in the 1800s either. This building was here much longer than we were being told. And this very wealthy individual was clearly a part of a group that allowed him to occupy this old world mansion. And then this is where they give us a clue for us to dig deeper. The clue is Theo Chandler, where they tell us that he designed this castle that got destroyed after just 56 years of use. Well, he also had a few other things attached to his name that should open a few eyes. First of all, he is off supposedly designing a brand new castle in Newcastle County, and they name it the Courthouse. A new castle located in a county called Newcastle in the USA, where it only got to stand for 40 years. At this point, alarms should be going off. A very clear pattern with these specific characters, where they are pinned to these old world buildings that hold narratives of incredible construction projects that are being destroyed after such a short amount of time. If we are advancing and times are easier now, we are better at construction now versus the 1800s. Why would they be knocking these type of structures down after just 40 years when we are clearly more advanced than the 1800s in nearly every single aspect, including training processes? We have established construction teams. We have incredible equipment, tools, and resources. And we would never do this. We would never knock this building down after just 40 years. Our towns build the ugliest buildings with basic materials and basic boring 90-degree angles. They look like boxes. Yet when the 1800s supposedly built a courthouse, it's a masterpiece that they could afford to and all agree to knock down. It's completely backwards and it isn't logical. Something much deeper is going on. And we know here that these are destruction projects to remove buildings that were previously here, built by a much more advanced civilization, and not built by Theo, while he's over there directing the project from inside his wagon carriage behind his horse on the dirt road. So let's take a look at what's really being said here. The building stood for just 40 years, which we know here that is not true. It was here much longer than that, and I need to make that clear. But they say that this was the best known building in the city, adding to the point that nobody would ever knock this thing down. The best known building in the city? After just 40 years? That's the time to blow it up? And this part of the paragraph is very interesting in my opinion, where they say, even if very few people now know what used to stand there, and this goes for the whole world, we really don't know what was knocked down before we were born. How long have they been knocking down buildings? 200 years? 300 years? We know, and we have documented many times, that they are still destroying these buildings today. But in the 1800s, there was no way to communicate this to thousands and millions of people, to let everybody know that this is happening in their town, and so that everyone could share that it was also happening in their town at the exact same time. They didn't have internet. I believe this was all taken away before 1776 and slowly given back to us. From that point on, the only news that anyone had that was being shared with the population was all controlled. And it seems like our ancestors from the 1800s were all just under their spell, and nobody could see what was going on around them and what the controllers were doing. And it also seems like up until just a few years ago, this was still going on, just destroying a lot of the old world's work, with nobody really realizing it. So here we have a destruction photo from 1919, where we are told and are being made to believe that only 39 years after its construction, the basically brand new, incredible stone structure was out of date and needed to be torn down. We know that this thing was much older, and as we've said, nobody is knocking this thing down after just 39 years. We are also told that the writer of this article thinks that many people who watched it get knocked down also watched it get built, which is simply not the case. And this is a demolition, a planned demolition. It was torn down. There was no fire. Take a look at the structure. And now let's look at the Palmer house from earlier. They look exactly the same. They both look like they've been destroyed on purpose, proving my point that no fire took down these buildings. Either it was a planned bomb in all of these cities with the Great Fire bombs, or they were just going door to door, using high-velocity explosives. And this brings up something that I've been thinking a lot about. We have all of these stories about these buildings that were knocked down, but it does make you think about how many buildings were destroyed before 1800 that we don't have any narratives or photos of, and they were just wiped out. Buildings that weren't classified as courthouses, but just regular stores, to create a new timeline and new narratives. Just based on these incredible mansions, hotels, castles, and courthouses in the USA that were demolished, it makes you really think and wonder if Budapest, the way that every single building basically looks like it's straight out of the old world, it makes you think, did nearly every single city in the world at one point before their great fire date look exactly like Budapest? And the buildings that made it through the main destruction on that great fire date, these were the structures that needed to be explained away in a false narrative and fit into our timeline for a 39-year gap and tossed out before anyone really noticed it. And now for the bonus today. We have the Symphony Center, a music complex located at 220 South Michigan Avenue. And before we dive into this bonus, I want to make sure that we take a minute and thank all of our badge members, all of our Patreons, and every single subscriber. You guys are all awesome and really helping this channel. I also want to say that this channel just hit the 1-year mark. A year ago, I put out the first episode while on my lunch break. I had built up a lot of information that I felt shouldn't just be inside my head and felt like it needed to be out there for others to hear. I was researching the old world and had previously learned through the years how to edit videos. So I thought maybe a few people would want to hear the information that I found. Little did I know that it would be millions, hitting over 4 million views in the first year. I think the coolest part about this is that we all know that we are not alone anymore. And there are literally millions of other people out there that are interested in finding the truth. And so many people that understand that there was a previous civilization and that the mainstream timeline is fabricated and that the mainstream history that we've all been force-fed since day one is a complete lie. And we're just getting started with this channel. Just knowing that there are millions of new people out there that are about to find out about this topic within this upcoming year of episodes is really cool. And I really look forward to seeing where we're at this time next year. Thank you to everyone here for all of your support, all of your comments, and for liking the episodes and sharing them. I couldn't have asked for a better first year of the channel, and this is just the beginning. Now that that's been said, here we go. A building that is here for everyone to see in Chicago, Illinois. A building that holds a 2,522-seat orchestra hall, a rehearsal hall and performance space, a ballroom, an event space that overlooks Michigan Avenue, and the Art Institute of Chicago that holds a multi-story rotunda. And for the best part of the story and the clear giveaway, this building, we are told, had its construction begin in May of 1904 and held its first concert that same exact year in December of 1904, over 120 years ago. All of this getting done in 7 months. That would be incredible if it was true. And we don't get the fire narrative here, but we do get an architect with the name Daniel Burnham. Burn. Really. It's just unbelievable. The amount of times that the narrative just throws something about burning or fires or destruction into these narratives. Burnham. Doesn't get any better than that. Well, besides the F.L. Ames character that we found in episode 50. Things that nobody noticed before, but they are very clear to us now, thankfully. Now, with a name like that attached to this kind of building, built in 7 months, 120 years ago, I think that qualifies for an investigation of Mr. Burnham, where he is pinned as a repeated failure. And I know I've seen this movie before, when they tell us that Abe Lincoln failed at everything and then became a hero. It has been used many, many times by the narrator. They pin this Byrne guy as the creator of the tallest building in Chicago in 1881, the Montauk Building, where in 1881, forget about sleep, forget about freezing winters, get your horses to the site and get this building done. Built in a year, from 1882 to 1883. This thing is done. The tallest building in Chicago. And you know what they gotta do? They gotta knock it down in 1902. That is literally 19 years later. Is anybody on the fence at this point? Well, if you are, this is gonna help you get off the fence and over to our side. Let's have some fun. the guy with fire in his name, Burnham, went on to build more of the first American skyscrapers, such as the Masonic Temple Building in Chicago, measuring 21 stories, 302 feet. This character knocked this thing out from 1891 to 1892. This was simple stuff back then. And knocking it down in 1939. But they could knock that one down because they had a new location and opened that one up in 1926, supposedly. And this new one holds the deadliest theater fire and the deadliest single building fire in U.S. history. After this fire killed 600 people. So we get the fire and the destruction of lives, where they say that this doubled the death toll of the Chicago Great Fire, which is weird because according to the National Geographic Society, the Chicago Great Fire destroyed 17,500 buildings. Only 120 bodies were recovered and 300 people died. Where we can all do the math and see that this does not add up for one building to hold more deaths than 17,500 buildings, and that there is a massive, massive lie just waiting for all of us to uncover it.